You believe the rich are trapped inside the same financial system as you, breathing the same economic air, obeying the same rules, and facing the same uncertainty about the future. But that belief itself is the first illusion the system quietly installs inside your subconscious mind. Because the truth cold, quiet, and uncomfortable is that the wealthy were never prisoners of the system in the first place. They were its architects, its engineers, its silent observers studying the behavior of the crowd while the crowd believed it was participating in a fair game. Listen carefully. Student, because the first rule of power is silence. And right now the world feels unusually quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before a storm, when the rain begins tapping against the glass and the cold wind crawls through empty streets while most people sit under warm lights scrolling through headlines, unaware that somewhere far above the noise of public debate the real players have already begun shifting their assets, their strategies, and their positions for what comes next in 2026. You see, the masses believe the system is broken, that inflation, economic instability, and political chaos are signs of failure. But the darker truth is that the system is functioning exactly as designed because a system that harvests attention, labor, and fear from billions of people while concentrating power into the hands of a microscopic elite is not malfunctioning at all. It is executing its blueprint with ruthless precision. This is the first level of understanding. The moment when you realize the trap was never built with visible walls, because the most effective prisons are psychological ones where people willingly participate in their own containment by chasing stability, monthly salaries, rising credit scores, and 30-year mortgages that quietly convert human time into financial obedience while convincing the mind that this routine is security rather than dependency. The rain grows heavier outside, echoing like static across a dark city skyline. And that sound represents the endless noise of the economy where millions of voices debate market predictions, investment strategies, and financial advice. Yet very few people realize that markets are not moved by opinions but by information. And information travels in layers where the deepest layers are invisible to the public eye. This is the second level, the illusion of participation, where you believe buying stocks, saving money, or following financial news makes you part of the economic machine. Yet the machine itself operates several layers above you, controlled by institutions, data networks, and capital flows that shift long before any headline appears on a screen. Meaning, by the time the public reacts, the real game has already progressed several moves ahead. The third level is psychological conditioning, where narratives are repeated so often that they embed themselves inside the subconscious mind of the masses. Phrases like "the market always recovers," "work harder and you will succeed," and "economic cycles are natural," statements that sound reasonable on the surface but serve a deeper purpose. They stabilize public behavior during instability so the system can continue harvesting participation even when the structure underneath begins to shift. Imagine standing in a quiet room while the wind howls outside, and you suddenly realize that every belief about money you grew up with was carefully shaped by education systems, media narratives, and social expectations designed to keep the population predictable. Because predictability is the most valuable resource in any economic structure that relies on large-scale human behavior. Now we enter the fourth level, the liquidity harvest, the moment in every financial cycle where fear becomes the most powerful force in the market. Because panic drives the crowd to sell assets at the exact moment when institutions with deep reserves quietly accumulate them, repeating a pattern that has existed for centuries where wealth moves upward during moments of mass uncertainty. But the story does not stop there, because the fifth level reveals something even more unsettling. The wealthy are no longer simply playing the traditional financial game. They are slowly disengaging from its most visible arenas, shifting capital away from highly exposed public systems into private networks, private investments, private infrastructure, and private technological ecosystems that operate far from the volatility of mass psychology. The cold wind outside slows, and the silence becomes heavier, because this stage marks the beginning of what some observers quietly call strategic disengagement, a process where powerful individuals and institutions reduce their dependency on systems that the public still believes are permanent while preparing alternative structures that will dominate the next economic era. This leads us to the sixth level, jurisdictional mobility, where geography becomes a strategic tool rather than a place of belonging, because capital in the modern world moves faster than borders, and those who control large amounts of wealth simply shift their operations between financial hubs such as Singapore, Dubai, or Switzerland whenever regulations, taxes, or political environments become unfavorable. While the public debates national policies and elections, the wealthy often operate above national limitations entirely, structuring their assets through global networks of corporations, trusts, and financial instruments that allow wealth to migrate like shadow across jurisdictions, always seeking the environment where control is strongest and exposure is lowest. Now the storm outside fades into a slow, steady rhythm, and that rhythm mirrors the quiet rise of something even more powerful than traditional finance, the data economy, where the seventh level of influence emerges through algorithms capable of studying human behavior with extraordinary precision by analyzing what people click, watch, fear, and desire across billions of digital interactions every day. When someone possesses enough data to model human behavior accurately, they gain the ability not only to predict decisions but to subtly guide them, shaping market sentiment, consumer trends, and even political narratives, which is why many of the world's most powerful individuals are investing heavily in artificial intelligence, data infrastructure, and predictive analytics. At the eighth level, the transformation becomes psychological, because the elite gradually detach from the emotional cycles that control the masses, learning to observe economic chaos with analytical calm while the public reacts with fear, excitement, or anger. Emotional states that create predictable patterns inside markets and societies. To operate at this level requires a shift in mindset where events that appear catastrophic to ordinary participants are interpreted simply as structural shifts within a larger system, opportunities to reposition capital and influence rather than reasons for panic or retreat. Then comes the ninth level, where a parallel economic structure begins forming quietly beneath the visible economy, composed of private capital networks, exclusive investment groups, closed technological ecosystems, and financial instruments that are inaccessible to the majority of the population, creating a layered economy where participation depends on proximity to power rather than effort alone. Most people will continue operating within the public layer of the system, trading labor for income and reacting to economic conditions that appear unpredictable, while a much smaller group navigates a deeper layer where decisions are made that influence entire industries, markets, and technological directions. Finally, we reach the 10th level, the level of the architect, where the most powerful individuals no longer chase wealth directly, but design environments where wealth flows naturally toward them through the structures they create. Whether those structures involve technology platforms, financial frameworks, political incentives, or global investment networks. At this level, control comes not from reacting to markets but from shaping the conditions that define how markets operate. Meaning the architect does not compete with the crowd, but instead builds the game board on which the crowd will eventually play. And this, student, is why whispers about the wealthy leaving the system have begun circulating in discussions about the coming years. Because from their perspective, the system you see today is only a temporary phase of a larger transition toward a more digital, more centralized, and more technologically mediated economic structure. The rain finally stops. The air becomes still, and the silence returns. But now you understand that silence differently, because it is not emptiness. It is preparation, the quiet moment where strategies are finalized and new systems are assembled while the world continues arguing about the old one. So when someone asks why the rich are leaving the system in 2026, the answer is not escape but evolution. Because the people who designed the current architecture are already constructing the next one. And by the time the masses notice the shift, the new system will already be running.